All right, so I'm going to work with you through A, B, C, and D, and then the rest are going to be for your homework. Your homework's going to go from 43 to 50. Okay, so I'll do, which is less homework than you had last night. Yeah, 43 to 50 is going to be your homework. But I'm gonna give you I'm gonna work through A through D with you to give you a sense. So on this, the bottom line is you want to solve for x, and it may come in different forms. So it may say something like this. You may have a function, right? This is a quadratic function, and find the roots. And we saw that finding the roots is the same thing as finding the zeros, and sometimes the same thing as finding x-intercepts. And what do you do to find the roots? You replace y with 0. And we don't have, if you don't have a y, f of x is the same thing as y. So you take away the f of x, put a 0 there, and it would look like some of the other ones. So the same idea here. If I say find the zeros, you're going to replace y with a 0, just like we were doing. So all these end up being equations that we're solving. So for part A, we're going to find the roots. So we're going to set f of x equal to 0. And solve. And you have the freedom to use whatever method you would like. So I usually, if it's something like this, if you have a trinomial, I'll probably try to factor it first and see if it factors. If it doesn't factor, then I'll probably use the quadratic formula. That's kind of what I tend to do. But again, any method's open. They're all going to work, except maybe not the factoring. So here, if I'm factoring, I notice that all my numbers are even. And so I could divide everything by 2. And when I divide 0 by 2, I get 0. Divide 6 by 2, I get 3. Divide the 8 by 2. Divide the 30 by 2. Okay. So I didn't factor here. I could have factored the 2 out, but instead of doing that, because it's an equation, I divided everything by 2, and it's gone now. Right? You are welcome to do that. And then I'm going to try to see, well, does this factor? And you tell me. And no, you tried it. So A times C is going to be negative 45. B is going to be negative 4. If we look at what multiplies 45, you got 15 times what? 3. That's where it came from. Can't make a 4 out of that. You have 9 times 5. I can make a 4 out of that, though, if I subtract them, huh? So negative 9 and positive 5. Does that work for you guys? Yeah? Does that work? Okay. So this will factor. If you can get this piece here to work, then it's going to factor. Again, you don't have to factor. If you're like, hey, I want to work on a different method here, I'll go ahead and do that. Do you need a paper? Do you have one? Okay. Sorry, I just didn't see it. So then we got 3x squared minus 9x plus 5x minus 15. And so go ahead and finish that problem. We get two answers. X equals 3, x equals negative 5/6. Okay. So before we leave this problem, don't forget about all the graphing stuff we've learned. So Logan, if I were to graph this, tell me one thing that you keep, anything about that graph. One fact about it. Has a minimum. How do you know that? Why'd you say it has a minimum? Yeah. If A is positive, that means it opens up, has a minimum. Good. Mac, tell me something else about this graph if I were to graph it. Opens up, has a minimum. What else can you add to that? Okay, what are the x-intercepts? Good. Good. Brandon, can you add anything else? 0, negative 30 for the y-intercept. Gets harder as we keep going here. Dennis, tell us one more thing. Give us the axis of symmetry. How'd you get it? But you got negative 5/3. So you'd actually have to add both of them. So you'd have to say, you are thinking right, you're finding the middle by averaging. You gotta go 3 plus negative 5/3. So that might be, let's try that. What's that gonna be? Hmm? Negative 2/3? What's an easier way to do that? Rather than having to average it. Remember the formula? Negative b over 2a. So negative b would be 8 over 2a. Are we getting the same thing? 8 over 12. That's positive. Why did I put negative? Oh, it should be positive, huh? Should be positive. So 8 over 12 is 2/3. So that's another way. Okay. All right. So don't forget that stuff. That's all I'm saying. All right. Let's look at the next one. Find the zeros of y equals x squared minus 81. So how do we find zeros? Set y equal to 0 and solve. So this is the same thing as writing x squared minus 81 equals 0. So for me, yeah. Question? What would you do? Yeah, so that's probably what I'd do too here. I'd just solve for x squared and take square root, and we're done. You could factor it. That would work too, but so just whatever method works for you. Quadratic formula you could have used on this as well. Okay. All right, go ahead and solve C. Any method you want, solve for C. Did we get an answer? 5 and negative 5? No. What's that? 5? No. 0 and 10. 0 and 10. And factoring would be the easiest method to go on this one. So you have to make it equal to 0 first. Okay? And then this is not a difference of two squares. Okay? You can't go like x plus 5 and x minus 5. That's not true. You factor out an x, and you get x times x minus 10, and set your factors equal to 0. And you got one more. Go ahead and solve part D any way you'd like. All right. What do we get for the answer here? 9 over 2 and negative 7. 9 over 2 and negative 7. What method did you use? Quadratic formula? Anybody use a different method? Completing the square. Wow. That's a crazy one for complete, but it worked. Anybody use factoring? It does factor. Well, if your answers don't have roots in them, or if they're not imaginary, it will factor. So, and these are rational answers. I use the quadratic formula. Here's what it looked like.